If you protect me from the cold, I will reward you, human." The alien's voice was as soft as the first snowflake of winter, yet it carried the weight of a promise not to be taken lightly. She stood in the dim glow of my cabin's lantern, appearing otherworldly, tall and slender, with a bluish hue to her skin that shimmered faintly. Her large, luminous eyes pleaded for help, their intensity cutting through the biting wind that rattled the shutters outside. I was no stranger to the harsh winters of the Alaskan wilderness, but never in my wildest dreams had I imagined encountering an extraterrestrial, let alone one seeking refuge from the cold. Shivering in my own thick parka, I hesitated. This could be some elaborate hoax, yet the desperation in her gaze made me push that thought aside. Whatever or whoever she was, she needed help. "Come in," I said, stepping aside to let her enter the warmth of my cabin. She moved gracefully, gliding over the creaky wooden floor, and settled near the crackling fireplace. Her name, as best as I could decipher from the series of melodic tones she produced, was something like Kisa. She explained, or perhaps projected into my mind, that she was from a distant star system. Her ship had malfunctioned, crash landing in the snowy forest a few miles away. The cold here was unlike anything she had ever experienced, and her physiology was ill-equipped to endure it. "What kind of reward are we talking about?" I asked, half joking, trying to mask my nervousness. Kisa tilted her head, her translucent hair catching the firelight. "Knowledge, a gift from my people, something that will change your life." I nodded, unsure whether I should be excited or terrified. "Let's start with keeping you warm first. Over the next few days, I did my best to help Kisa acclimate to her temporary refuge. I lent her spare blankets, my thickest jackets, and even fashioned a makeshift heater from old parts lying around the cabin. In return, she shared snippets of her advanced technology, showing me how to purify water with a simple handheld device and repair electronics using a gel-like substance she carried. Each revelation was more mind-boggling than the last. In the evenings, as blizzards howled outside, we talked, or rather, communicated through a mix of her melodic tones and the images she projected into my mind. She told me about her home, a world bathed in perpetual twilight, with crystalline trees and oceans that sparkled like liquid gemstones. Her people valued harmony and innovation above all else, their lives intricately tied to the natural rhythms of their planet. "Why did you come here?" I asked one night, curiosity gnawing at me. Kisa's expression darkened. "Exploration, but also necessity. Our resources are dwindling. We sought new worlds to learn from, to perhaps share a mutual benefit." Her words carried a weight of sorrow I couldn't fully comprehend. Yet, despite her alien nature, I felt an inexplicable bond forming between us. There was an undeniable humanity in her struggles. Then, one morning, Kisa's condition took a turn for the worse. Her normally shimmering skin had dulled, and she seemed weaker, her movements sluggish. "The cold," she murmured. "It is consuming me." Panic gripped me. I had done everything I could think of, but it wasn't enough. Desperate, I decided to take her back to her ship. Perhaps there was something there that could help her. The journey through the snow-laden forest was arduous. Kisa leaned heavily on me, her body trembling with every step. I pushed forward, driven by a mix of fear and determination. After what felt like hours, we reached the crash site. Her ship was a sleek silver pod, partially buried in snow, its surface gleaming faintly in the pale sunlight. Kisa guided me to a panel, and with a series of gestures, she activated it. The ship hummed to life, and a welcoming warmth emanated from within. I helped her inside, and watched as she accessed a compartment filled with strange vials and devices. She applied a glowing substance to her skin, and almost immediately, some of her color returned. Relief flooded her face. "Thank you," she said, her voice stronger now. "You have done more for me than I could have hoped." Before I could respond, a sudden rumble shook the ground. The sky above us darkened as a massive shadow descended. Another ship, far larger and more imposing, hovered above the trees. Kisa's expression shifted to one of alarm. "They've come for me," she said grimly. "Not my people. They are hunters, scavengers. They track us across galaxies." My heart raced. "What do we do?" Kisa looked at me, her eyes filled with determination. "Hide. I will lead them away." "No," I said firmly. "We'll face them together." She hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. But be warned, human. Their technology is advanced beyond your understanding." The hunters descended, monstrous and mechanical, exuding menace. Kisa and I stood side by side, a fragile alliance against an overwhelming force. She activated a device that projected a shimmering barrier around us, but the hunters began to probe its weaknesses. "I cannot hold this for long," Kisa warned. Thinking quickly, I grabbed a flare gun from my pack. It wasn't much, but it was something. As the hunters breached the barrier, I fired the flare directly at one of them. The explosion startled them, buying us a precious moment. Kisa used the distraction to unleash a wave of energy from her device, sending the hunters reeling. "Run!" she shouted. We sprinted back into the forest, the hunters in pursuit. Kisa led us to a hidden alcove, where she activated another device. A portal shimmered into existence. "This will take me home," she said, turning to me. "You cannot come." I felt a pang of sadness. Will I ever see you again? Kisa placed a hand on my shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "Perhaps. But for now, take this." She handed me a small crystalline object. "It holds the knowledge I promised. Use it wisely." Before I could respond, she stepped into the portal. It closed behind her, leaving me alone in the silent forest. Back at the cabin, I examined the crystal. It glowed faintly, and as I held it, images and information flooded my mind. Blueprints for advanced technology, solutions to environmental crises, and concepts that seemed light years ahead of anything on Earth. Kisa had kept her promise. Her gift was more than I could have imagined. Yet, as I stared into the night, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd ever encounter her again. For now, I had a new purpose. To use her knowledge to make a difference, to honor the trust she had placed in me, and perhaps one day, to repay her in kind. As the seasons changed, I began to implement the knowledge Kisa had left behind. The crystal's insights transformed my small, isolated existence. I introduced innovations that improved life for the surrounding communities, renewable energy systems, advanced medical treatments, and sustainable agricultural practices were just the beginning. Word spread, and soon people came from far and wide to learn about the miraculous advancements. I told them little of the true source, simply calling it a stroke of inspiration. Yet deep down, I knew this was Kisa's legacy, a bridge between worlds. Years passed, and though I never saw her again, I often gazed at the stars, wondering if she watched from her distant home. The bond we shared, however brief, had left an indelible mark on me.